Hey, Audrey, how you doing?
Hello, Raymond.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too. And good to see all of you out there. Thank you for tuning in to
The fourth space. The fourth space.
Fourth
I don't know how to say it right. How do you say
space.
it? That's
The
it. Yes.
fourth space.
That's it.
Yes. I'm Audra Wolfman and
I'm Raymond Wiley.
Yes.
Yep.
And our episode today is Out of This World.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a short.
Fire
right
me.
We got our first short of the episode right there. No, you're right. Look, I've been flashing back, man. Remembering watching the X-Files when I was a kid, watching Unsolved Mysteries with my mom. Did you ever watch Unsolved Mysteries?
Yeah, of course. I would still watch it, if I had the time. Although maybe some of those mysteries have been solved.
Maybe I called a few numbers. Maybe I called the 800.
Yes. I don't know. I prefer Spock's show that was on after.
Oh, In Search of.
In Search of.
Yes. I was addicted to it. I remember I was like, I told my fifth grade teacher, can I show an episode? Can we play an episode during class? And I thought it was going to be a really interesting one. And don't get me wrong, this would be interesting to me as an adult, but it wasn't like werewolves or UFOs or anything. It was just Easter Island statues.
Oh, I like that episode. That's a good one.
I like that Easter Island Massacre, I think it's called, or something like that. And I enjoyed it, but the straight arrows in my class were all just snoring. They were thinking about baseball. They were thinking about Little League. I don't know.
Don't they care? So, don't they want to know how those giant heads got there?
I want to know.
Who carried them?
I want to know. That's right.
Could it be aliens?
Maybe, and we're going to get into some of that today. So we've got this awesome guest, like a couple of the different people we've had on the show up until this point, like old school podcaster, old school internet broadcaster, and known this guy a long time, Smiles. Stephen Miles Lewis, yes, from Anomaly Archives, famous Texan if there ever was. And we're going to be talking about UFOs, the world of UFOlogists, and that sort of thing. So, I mean, if you were one of the 5 people that saw Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day this summer, you're going to love this episode. But before we bring our guest on, let's bring on From the Void. Yeah, surprised you, Ian. You didn't know it was coming.
All the way from the void.
Never do.
That's right. How you doing?
You're from the summer home in the Bouteille void.
That's right. Is it boiling hot where you are? I mean, Denver has been like the surface of the sun.
It's actually been kind of pleasant recently. Maybe that's just in juxtaposition to the absolute, Dagobah ass conditions that have been going on for the month prior to that.
Fair.
But
it's
how about
63
your skies?
Degrees here.
Oh my God, Audrey. Don't brag.
Just thought I'd throw that out there.
How about your skies? Are your skies filled with Canadian wildfire smoke?
No, but we did have some dramatic clouds at one point where I looked up and I literally told my wife, it's like, you cannot convince me that doesn't look like the skies from Independence Day. Like right when it's starting to roll into the city and you see like the roiling of the clouds with the light in the middle. Like the sunset was right at the perfect angle. It was like, ooh, maybe they're here to blow us up finally.
God, it's about time.
And out of that cloud emerges a UFOlogist. Hey, Smiles.
Hey, y'all.
Ew.
Thanks for having me.
Good to have you on today. How have you been?
Been doing all right. Sweating like everybody else, mostly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're all sweating to the oldies.
In Texas these days? You still?
Yep, still in Austin, Texas.
Okay, cool.
Born in San Antonio, but raised here since kindergarten.
Oh, those are good parts. See, I was born in Houston, and we just fled.
Totally. So, there's like just a million topics we can talk about, just because we've been working in these genres for so long. We've been broadcasting in this mode for so long. But, before we start talking about your body of work and your different shows and stuff, I want to talk about Austin a little bit. Me and Ian lived in Athens, Georgia for many, many years. We were roommates for a while, and Athens is sort of like a mini Austin. It's like Austin if it only had 100,000 people. So, but having lived in a place like that, I could definitely see how you're going to find the others in a place like that. So what was it like growing up there, not moving there as a student, but actually being in elementary school?
Pretty amazing. I definitely have a love-hate relationship with this town, trending more towards the hate as it's gotten out of control, busy and large, and the influx of people. But I mean, it is a great town. I used to describe it as the last liberal stronghold of Texas. The rest of the state really looks at us some admiration, a lot of disdain, and the moniker that became adopted by the Chamber of Commerce of keep Austin weird. Austin has always had that reputation, and I think it largely has to do with that weird confluence of being the seat of political government and a college town, and always just having a certain weird, wild, free spirit. And while it's definitely grown more conservative as it's also grown in population size, and the city limits keep expanding, and we now wrestle with the same tech bureaucracy influences that are everywhere. It was really amazing. I was really privileged to have being raised by my single mother who fought for my being put into the best school. The first elementary school I went to, I was only there very briefly because I used to suffer from migraines, and she had a standing order that if I got a migraine, I could get out of class, no questions asked. And at some point I was telling her, the teacher just kept screaming at us. And my mom went and stood outside the class just to verify what I was reporting. And she heard it, and bam, she put me into this wonderful school right downtown. That's kind of like an old historic elementary school. Sadly, it's no longer actually being used as a school. That's a whole other problem that's going on here. They're shutting down all the schools because they don't have enough students. There's all these people moving here, and there's not enough students. It's very strange. But this wonderful place called Pease Elementary, fond memories of going there for 1st through 6th grade, and just wonderful teachers, instilling in me that thirst for knowledge. And that's where I first started checking out books from the library on Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, UFOs, paranormal stuff, all that stuff, Bermuda Triangle, Atlantis. But this is also the kind of school where we would do the maypole, and it was right across the street from another historic a school that became Austin Community College. And there's just a lot of amazing history about Austin. We may have had the first serial killer in North America. We had one of the first mass shootings, sadly, with the UT Tower sniper. But we also inculcated this amazing, weird, psychedelic country rock ethos. I mean, Willie Nelson, after giving up on music, went to some shows in Austin and was re-inspired, and went on to his then massively next level of career, and is still going. So
how
cool.
old were this is kind of referencing a movie Audra and I have talked about in the podcast before. How old were you when Slacker came out? Do you remember this film when it came out?
Okay, so what year was it? So I graduated in 1989. I'm 55 years old.
I think it was it 89? I think that was the
been.
year it came out.
Yeah.
Or 90. Yeah, one or the other.
That is the movie that I pin on why Austin got as big as it has gotten. That seemed to be the seed. I remember a few years after that, I was working at a video store, slinging porn. It was a regular video store, but we had the back area, which is where they made all their money.
Awesome.
But yeah. And at least one of the fellows I lived there practically worked with there was a musician who had moved to Austin. And when I asked him, so what was it that got you to move here? it was seeing the movie Slacker.
Yes.
And that movie is so awesome in terms of like just having so many vignettes that really did epitomize Austin at a certain point in time.
Sure.
Yeah, all the conspiracy theory, you know, that's when conspiracy theories were fun. And now they're just deadly.
Yeah.
They were so innocent and lovable and just,
Even the crazier ones. There's the gentleman with the toupee, this older gentleman who's one of the ones that follows the guy out of the coffee house and starts ranting about, we've been on the moon since the 50s or whatever. That man, he crashed on my couch for a period of time. We became really good friends. We met doing biomedical research studies to make money, you know, just like, and he had
Like
met
you do.
Arnold. Yes, like you do. And he
in
had
a
met
college
Arnold
town.
Schwarzenegger.
Always a thriving business in a college town.
And he was a non-fundamentalist Scientologist, which led to some very interesting conversations. Because even at that point, I was aware of the dangers. But he was like, no. I just, you know, it's kind of like being a Freemason. It just helps you get along in the world.
What was your first inkling that Austin was a sort of mecca for counterculture and subculture groups?
Well, you know, I did get to go to this musical mecca of the legendary Armadillo World headquarters, which was this like old Quonset hut army surplus store turned hippie music beer garden that not just hippie, you know, psychedelia was coming through, but like the Ramones and Frank Zappa and like massive acts that at that point were just kind of just taking off. I did get to go there a couple times as a kid. And so, I mean, I guess just touched the fringe of that before it shut down. And then there were a couple of other local music venues that really gave me that impression. I guess it was when I started realizing there were all these weird connections. I was exposed to like comedian Bill Hicks early on in the early 90s, but like it wasn't till a few years later when I really was like, oh my God, that's that guy I saw on that video magazine, Impact Video Magazine back in the day. And, you know, bands like the Butthole Surfers were, you know, I mean, I'm like, that's so weird that they would come from Texas, let alone the town I was in. And I think it really sunk in probably with the phenomenon of Slacker and Austin Access Television, which was one of the first such programs in the country, and the crazy people that were on that public access TV, including Alex Jones, watching his rise and fall and rise again and fall, and that's just insane.
Was he at your high school as well, or was he in Williamson County? Or
no, I believe he was from Rockwall, Texas. Okay. And of course, he has his origin story, which has been pretty much put down as fantasy by was it Knowledge Fight or whatever. But you know, I had a lot of I had a few interactions with him over the years, good and bad.
Was he known to be punchy? I hate to ask these like really tabloid kind of questions, but like, what's come out about him in his early life was that like he was a bully in high school and he would get in fights. So did he have that reputation early on?
Well, of course, he put forth, I think, the story that he really like created this mythology about, I think, how he had gotten some local drug rings in trouble, or some local kid gangs in trouble, and that ultimately his dad, the famous possible CIA dentist, had to like extricate him from that and move to Austin. But he's always had that kind of reputation of being a bully and getting into fights. But also there were enough stories of him really just not being that at all. There were a number of altercations that happened, like in the parking lot of the Access TV community television station. There's all these weird. I mean, of course, years later, as he got huge, it's just like anybody. You with that big of an audience, you're going to be touching that many more people with mental health issues, and that's going to come back to haunt you. There's this guy that called himself the Phantom Patriot, who is the one who, years after Alex infiltrated Bohemian Grove, also infiltrated Bohemian Grove, but he was like dressed up as a comic book superhero. He actually drew his own comic book and left copies at Access TV, and just things like that. But
was Alex the first person to do like a sort of Fordian style broadcast on Austin?
What style?
Like Fordian,
well, I would say
weird
no,
stuff.
He very vehemently avoided anything having to do with the UFOs and the paranormal or strange phenomena for a long time. And seeing that shift has been very interesting. I'm one of the few people who's reported on the fact that in 2003, of course, he's long maintained, and there is the evidence of his making the claims of, there's this imminent attack by Osama bin Laden on World Trade Centers back in August of 2001. But it was a few years later where, in talking to a couple of different other researchers, he spoke out and made the claim that he has had a lifetime of precognitive visions, and that he'd never spoken about that until like 2003. Because he didn't want to be associated with any of that. And of course, this is what kept him off of shows like Coast to Coast for a very long time. And I still remember, I don't remember exactly when it was, but there was a point where I guess Art finally let more conspiracy people on. I mean, he had on like classic JFK types conspiracy stuff, but he really steered clear of anything wider than that. But there was this infamous 9/11 Truth Roundtable where they had like Alex and 2 or 3 other people on to talk and do like a pro and con conspiracy debate. That was, I mean, really that was a huge shifting point for his career. And for years he would make fun of David Icke as being somebody who's discrediting conspiracy theories by talking about all this reptilian stuff. And
you call him a turd in the punch bowl. That's what
yes,
he called it.
Yes, and then finally that all changed, just like everything does, I guess.
Right. So that grandiosity eventually leaked into his onstage persona. It's just like it did with David.
When he started, he was on local FM radio. He had a regular time slot on a mainstream FM radio show, and he was popular. But as one would imagine, the advertisers had a real problem with him, and that was basically what got him kicked off of FM radio. But at that point, it didn't matter because he was doing Access TV every night, almost every single night on Access TV, and that was his testing ground and creative ground floor for his creation of the documentaries that he made.
Yeah, and he got to that stuff years before other creators did.
Yes,
with a point of sale system and a way to monetize it. I mean, I remember watching this in 05, 06, 07, and it was really impressive watching that.
He started so far before that. I mean, I didn't really start watching him until like 1999, 98. And I was a huge fan. It was the most entertaining thing to watch. And yeah, it was a different time. It was still fun. And he hadn't migrated to what he's now become, or mutated to what he's become. I mean, I think he was always there, but there's all these background stories that have never been told about the local micro FM pirate radio wars that went on. And once he reached a certain level of popularity post 9/11, all these other broadcasters were moving here, and there were competing conspiracy oriented networks that were created.
Genesis, CBN,
WFU, Freedom Underground, and
Freedom Underground. I was on that. I think I was on that one. Maybe I don't know.
My
Anomaly Network. Yep.
Which one?
Anomaly Network.
Oh,
Didn't that
well,
start
yeah.
right around that time too. So
I started in 2000 to promote the 2001 National UFO Conference, and just to experiment with internet radio, and have been streaming ever since.
Awesome. Well, we'll get to the UFO stuff in a minute, but I don't want to cut this conversation off at the knees, as it were. In some of your writings and in the New York Times article that you were featured in, you talked about how you were thinking back to those times, thinking back to when conspiracy theories were fun, and trying to pinpoint the moment where everything kind of jumped the shark, as it were. And you didn't really have an answer at the time of that New York Times article was written. Do you have more of an answer to that now?
I don't think there's any one thing. I mean, I think it all obviously hinges on a certain rump on fire in the Oval Office. I you know, using my interest in Alex as a gauge, it became like post 9/11, as entertaining as he was, there really was this feeling, and I don't know how many people really remember this, but in the wake of 9/11, the world fell in love with America and felt so much empathy and sympathy for us. There really was this moment, it seemed like, where, as much as like there was already like right before 9/11, there was all this anti-globalism, activism and protests happening, and anti-surveillance, like, the surveillance cameras were coming down in places all around the United States. Like there was a real sense of like progressive change. And with 9/11, the world just seemed to be, hanging on to this idea of the poor America, like as bad as we are and have been to the rest of the world. There was so much sympathy, and so in the wake of that, Alex really did seem to be like a uniter. He was having on lefties, he was having on right wing, and people were coming together in the wake of this, and seemed to be like, we need some kind of positive political change. Of course, he completely flubbed it, and that's probably the wrong word to use, but I think I just saw him getting worse and worse and worse until there was this moment where I was just like, I can't even stand hearing his voice anymore. I can't stand seeing him make these terrible mistakes over and over and contradict the anti-authoritarian ethos that he used to espouse. And then once he started endorsing Trump, I was like, just like, what in the hell has happened here? And
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it seems like he suffered from the thing you see so many times, and I think the manosphere gets attached to this tendency a lot, is that it's innocent and it's funny because it's so absurd, but then you look around and you realize, like, oh wait, like 80% of the consumer base is not realizing this is satire. Crap. This is gonna be a problem.
That's when the internet comes in. I feel like the internet is really to blame for that situation.
Yeah.
It's just amplifying things. It's so much. What is it? J. Ron Lanier talks about, like, it's so much quicker to get you to feel outrage,
or
pain, or a sense of injustice. Making someone love a work of art or enjoy something, that's a much more subtle emotion, and it takes longer to appear. And they ain't got no time for that. They want your money. Sell some ads.
It's opportunity cost right there. We need efficiency.
That's right.
That's right. Alex's appeal as an entertainer was his what seemed like satire, what seemed like his ability to do skits and voices, and in case you're not aware, and I've apologized about this publicly many times, I'm one of the reasons that the whole Alex Jones's Bill Hicks meme started, and it was completely a joke, and it was just because I knew that they knew each other, and they both knew a Sacred Cow producer, Kevin Booth, and their Southern Baptist preacher style and their performance styles really reminded me of each other, and so we used to joke about that, but it was that that ability to entertain with these kind of voices and skits that I think that was made it all just seem fun and silly. But then at some point, those become more vitriolic. They become like really just he's othering and demonizing people in ways that are just completely inappropriate. And you realize at some point, oh no, this is not this is not satire. This is not joking. And again, going back to this, as his audience grows, you just get more and more people who are taking the bait on that hate bait, that sensationalistic crap that then is with the most mentally unhealthy, leading them to harass violence victims and everybody. And he started it also with his ambush journalism approach, where he would like go up to somebody, ingratiate himself, and then be like, well, I'm Alex Jones, and I infiltrated Bohemian Grove. Whatever.
Do you feel that this is like a cynical decision for him, that he knows how to increase his fame by causing friction, or does he actually believe what he's talking about?
That's the $1 million question.
Right.
I've heard so many endless speculations about him being an operative, or there's a million conspiracy theories about him doing this for some agenda, but honestly, I just don't think he's smart enough for it. When I interviewed Raymond back in 2014, we did a long talk about broadcasting and podcasting and how the change in the landscape, and we talked about Alex Jones, and I expressed, the thing I always have been amazed at is just how successful he's been with building that empire. And I, up until a point, I was like really enamored with how he did that, even as I increasingly did not like what he was doing with it. But like, and capitalizing at the beginning, even though he was selling those tapes, he was doing the whole mystery science theater, like keep circulating the tapes, copy. And I knew people who knew the people that he was paying on a monthly basis to mass produce these. And it was just, the numbers were insane. First the cassettes and then the DVDs. But at the same time, though, after a certain point, he stopped talking about that. Obviously, that became, more of a selling point. But I think once he got into the supplements market, probably, and
I'd say that's the real.
That's the thing. When you ask whether or not he believes it, it's like, I don't think it matters, because he's so pot committed to the grift of selling dick pills and brain pills and, whatever supplement products. Like that's the whole thing. If you are that much of a snake oil salesman, the first rule is you can never walk anything back, ever. No, this will cure everything. I don't care what evidence you show me.
That's our next step on the fourth space.
Oh, yeah.
We've got the fourth supplement that a lot of people don't know about yet, but it does cure everything.
We've hired Shang Tsung from Mortal Kombat to be our sales rep, to be our mascot. He's going to grift you into health, into good health.
Yeah, better than curing cancer. It actually turns it into the cancer from that one weird John Travolta movie where it gives you superpowers.
Oh yeah.
So be looking for that. That'll be in the merch store soon. As soon as we get the merch store.
As soon as we get some merch, absolutely.
Miles, I did an interview a few years ago with a guy who was writing about William Cooper, and he had a good biography that he was writing. I really enjoyed. I can't remember his name. I think it was on Ken's podcast. And I remember having all of these questions about how did William Cooper sell videos? Where did William Cooper give speaking engagements? How did William Cooper make his money? And the guy didn't. They seemed like he looked. He was sort of you could tell in the interview. He was like, "Why are you asking questions like this?" But I feel like some of this stuff is the most interesting things about these conspiracy celebrities. Yeah. And whereas we don't really have a lot of that info for William Cooper, I don't think. We all had that with Alex Jones. We all watched that sort of meteoric rise that he had. It was,
and I mean that question is still always, try to follow the money in terms of where who's funding these things. I mean, it's this very important question in just mainstream politics, obviously, but and you can learn a lot from that. With William Cooper, though, I've only recently realized been made aware that there's an Austin connection, in so much as he alleged that he was working in naval intelligence under Bobby Ray Inman, who lives here in Austin, and who was held all these different governmental positions and intelligence community positions, and was the head of Wackenhut, the infamous security for Area 51 for years. And so that's a very strange allegation of connection. I haven't seen any verification of that, but yeah, how did he? Especially when he was basically just a drunk, a very angry drunk. And
William Cooper.
Yeah, the famous "Behold a Pail of Horseshit" book
Yep.
is just
co-written by a Xerox machine.
Right.
So
the Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars chapter was that folklore is so wonderful. Of like, somebody found this weird white paper in a Xerox machine at an auction, and that's reproduced in the book, and it's all about examining society like a cybernetic system and for a system of control. It's one of the more interesting parts of the book, but of course it's got no provenance that you can verify.
Sure. And then there's other things that have provenance that are very dark.
Yeah, which don't appear in any new
protocols
editions.
of the elders design, just goes right over his head. Okay, so to close this section about conspiracy theories and about Austin in general, like we talk about like all these moves that Alex Jones and people like him made to like push forward Web 2.0, push forward digital media, this sort of thing. And it sounds like a very similar story to what I experienced coming up, which was I worked at a volunteer radio station. And it sounds like Alex Jones got himself ready to do all this video production by doing that regular shift every week at Austin Public Access. And so I think there's something to be said for that. And it could be easily missed as like this huge state-funded step up the ladder, So did you do a show there as well, or?
Sort of. So right out of high school, one of my best friends and I had a very keen interest in film and wanted to get in film production. We got our video producer licenses at Access TV. This is right before they were about to transition to like new camera systems, a new location, and we basically tried to do the same model that Alex did, but this before I do that about Alex or that he was doing this. But this is Access TV was basically like if you anything you produce with their equipment, you're supposed to air on Access TV. But once you've aired it just once, you can market it, you can sell it, and that's how he leveraged that public access equipment into his documentary production factory. I didn't actually ever do any live shows. What I started doing, and so there were a number of other like paranormal, parapolitical oriented shows on Access that were much more my speed and flavor. There was one called Reality Expander. There was one called Therefore I Am. All of these guys had a keen interest in conspiracy, but they were also much more interested in the occult and esoterica and the paranormal in general. And so that was my in. And one of them was a wealthy software developer, and he would pay anybody to get their producer's license. He'd also pay to get you a concealed carry license and buy you your first gun. And he would do all the work for you to get your shows on the air. And I always loved experimenting with audio and video and doing like synchronized mixing and mashups. And so I would like make VHS video music tapes where I would just be playing random videos and then doing an audio mix over it and just see what kind of weird synchronicities happen. This is like, way back when people were first, I guess, discovering things like, Dark Side of the Rainbow, Pink Floyd and
Wizard of Oz.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so I was making videos like that. And so I was putting like Terrence and McKenna over these other weird UFO videos and with music. And then one, weekend I went up with this producer to his second home. And we re-edited them with all these like, remember the old iTunes visualizer? We would like mix in all that. So it was just this really weird psychedelic amalgamation of stuff. And then we'd add titles and we'd air that. And that was my like contribution to access television. Some of those I've actually put on YouTube. A lot of them get struck down for obvious copyright reasons, but also, you know, in the Anomaly Archives Patreon, I've put up one or two that I can't put on YouTube. So
sounds very Night Flight.
Yeah, great stuff. Love that kind of stuff.
But you too, you have your own media empire right now. And
yes,
the Anomaly Empire.
The Anomaly Empire.
Yeah.
There's so much to ask you. Para-crypto ufology. Where to begin?
Yeah. So with my interest in all these things, I turned that coined that turn of phrase, just to describe my interest in cryptozoology, paranormal, parapsychology, ufology. I really, my main passion has always been UFOs, but from very minor personal psychic experiences that I had as a child, convinced me that there was more to reality than we were being led to believe, and that scientists were too quick to scoff and laugh at things that I thought have more validity than they were willing to admit or look into. And I, you know, in some ways that is so many people's entree to conspiracy and cover up, the idea that, you know, science is trying to keep these important things from us. But at some point also, as I was reading certain researchers like John Keel, this journalist turned paranormal researcher, he it turned me on to the phrase that he coined called ultra-terrestrials. This idea that that the extraterrestrial hypothesis is really, you know, it's not impossible, but it doesn't fit the data. And this is something that my favorite UFO researcher, Jacques Vallée, has been saying forever, that, you know, I'll be very disappointed if UFOs turn out to simply be extraterrestrial.
Yeah.
And all the ideas, all the more interesting ideas provide the perfect cover for extraterrestrial. So, you know, that's still there. But years later, there was this wonderful, I would describe him as a cyberpunk blogger named Mac Tonys, who wrote a blog called Post-Human Blues, and he was really into, you know, cybernetics and the idea of the singularity and all this before that really just went bonkers crazy in our reality. And he was putting together a book that sadly had to be published posthumously because he died in his sleep due to a heart condition. Just a wonderful, lovable fellow whose work has been preserved, thankfully. But he coined the term crypto-terrestrial, very much in the Keelian idea of whatever, if there's an intelligence here, it's been here as long as or longer than we have. And that para-crypto ufology, that was trying to capture some of that. Because my ideas, I mean, I entertain a panoply, a wide tapestry of threads of ideas, of hypotheses that are not mutually exclusive, but that are near and dear to my heart, that range from the Gaia hypothesis, the idea that somehow some aspect of this phenomena is the planet herself trying to educate us for the inevitable encounter with true extraterrestrials by faking them, like staging experiences with us, but also that the mechanism that allows for that interface with Gaian consciousness could be enabling us to have encounters with everything from, you know, you've heard the whole Carl Jungian idea of the archetypes and the collective unconscious, and that explanation for UFOs, and the idea of tulpas, which has largely been debunked, but this idea of tulpas, Tibetan physicalized thought form concept, or egregores and that sort of thing, but that maybe that mechanism of manifestation, besides allowing us to engage with something that seems completely alien, other to us, but which is actually just some aspect of our own individual unconscious or the collective human unconscious. But if that mechanism is real, all the parapsychological data suggests to me that, and to some other researchers that are more respectable than me, the idea that, you know, well, what about the collective unconscious of things like, you know, collective species unconscious, like the insect kingdom or the reptile kingdom? Like maybe that's where the imagery and the sense of a hive mind that people say they're encountering with these beings, maybe that's just a symbolic representation of that. And there's a lot more I want to go into on that, but that's where I need to write a book or something. But you know.
I love how I'm reading your material for an hour or two earlier today, and I'm loving how we're going through all these consciousness topics, and you never mention magic mushrooms, ayahuasca, LSD, any of the Timothy Leary stuff. You know what I mean? Like,
he's just got a gallon jug of DMT just off camera that he's about to pull out.
There it is.
Well, you know, I haven't mentioned that. You're correct, but I don't discount all that, and I'm very much interested in all that. In fact, my first foray into being published was a review of Alien Dreamtime, the rave video that featured Terence McKenna.
Yeah.
And that actually led to my very close friendship with the producer of that, Ken Adams, a wonderful gentleman who I love dearly, and who has told me so much more about Terence McKenna than I ever needed to know, and the weird, crazy life that they both led. And this friend is still alive, and but he's, you know, much older than me. But no, I think that there's a lot to that. But yeah, you know, typically depending upon your audience, you don't want to start talking about drug-induced. You know, even though these are naturally like at least with DMT, it's endogenous. It's not. It's something that is already part of our physiology. You know, it's not just like alcohol or mushrooms or whatever. Even though I love mushrooms. So.
This is an old podcast greatest hit. Do you think you could recount the Terence McKenna Electrolux story for those who haven't heard of it? You remember this one? I think it was Terence McKenna's brother, maybe, that experienced this. Either him or his brother.
I'm not sure which one that might be.
Yeah, they're like tripping really hard, and they have the UFO encounter, and it's huge. It's this beautiful stainless steel UFO, and it comes right down, right over their head. He looks up, he can reach out and touch it, and it says Electrolux on the side.
So I'm not sure if so that's the great thing about McKenna is there's so many versions and variations of his hypothesizing, his on the fly, ranting, raving, literally, and I love it. I just recently found my old cassette of Terence McKenna, Roman Chariots on the Moon, which I did as also variously known as the fractal soliton of improbability hypothesis, but that's a whole other thing. But yeah, no, that's what you're describing is recounted in his book, The Invisible Land, or no, True Hallucinations, when he's down in the Amazon they're looking for ayahuasca, but they end up finding the mushroom, and he's tripping balls. I thought he was by himself, but I've heard variations where he mentions being there with his brother. And yes, he's like, the way he tells it, you know, here I am, you know, one of the world's foremost experiencers of psychedelics, and so I should know when I'm hallucinating and when I'm not. And then I see, he described like an actual, like a cloud forming into a classic cloud cigar UFO, and shooting out of it comes this Adamski style sci-fi looking and sounding craft that he's like, he knows the Adamski saucer is a hoax. and yet he's seeing in physical 3D space in front of him and flying over him and making cheesy sci-fi sounds. I'm guessing he heard a theremin. I don't know. And yeah, it goes over and he's just like, what am I to make of this? Like, I know that the imagery I'm seeing is from a known hoax, but here I feel I am witnessing this even though I am high as a kite on mushrooms. And I love McKenna, and he did so much to me. Not in a bad way.
Where did he
do to you?
He turned
Kids'
me on
earmuff smiles continue.
Yes. Well, I literally was hearing, I was reading his material, you know, in the last couple of years of high school, so 88, 89, and that's when I was, you know, experimenting with mushrooms. Probably would have been doing that even without having ever heard of him, but you know. But yeah, no, and the Timothy Leary's all, you know, smile, which I can't rattle off the acronym for, sorry, but you know, he was very much and see, Leary is another example of this massive, the counterculture contactees. There were so many people, Robert Anton Wilson, Robert Temple, all these different people that were either investigating or literally having these weird experiences with voices from somewhere. Philip K. Dick, these were all the things that made me, as I was encountering this in the 90s, that took me out of my UFO stupor of having grown up believing in crash saucers, pickled aliens, and government cover-ups, and reading Jacques Vallée and Whitley Strieber and others who were like grappling with this phenomenon and trying to find deeper explanations or deeper analyses of it. And McKenna was right there, but again, at first he was kind of antagonistic, I think, with the likes of Whitley Strieber, but ultimately I think that they all kind of came around.
Birds of a feather.
Yeah.
For sure. So you had already encountered a sort, like you militant agnostic, as it says on your subtitle today. You were already kind of getting into that mode before you joined MUFON. Is that correct?
Yeah. So
that's interesting to me that you already came at it from that angle.
I mean, I would say I was still transitioning in that regard. I still very much, was reading so much classic UFO literature, reading the stuff that was the same within the same mythology that I'd grown up believing in, but I was being exposed to these ideas that were expanding my perspective. And one of my first job after high school was working at our main public library here in Austin, and that kind of, I've had a long history of working in and for and around library or library related type things, but not actually a trained librarian. But it was as I was working at the Austin Public Library in the periodicals department, processing the magazines for the public to read, that I was started being able to read the MUFON journal, which I would process. And then, of course, these were all, we didn't keep them past a certain date. And so, once they were deaccessioned, I would take those and add them to the collection. Waste not, want not. But that's when I discovered, oh, wait, there is a local chapter and they meet right next door in the Austin History Center. And so I started attending those meetings. And that's when, this is 1990, when I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm the youngest person here and I'm the most well-read, and I'm the only person who thinks it could be anything other than extraterrestrials. And it was, I made some wonderful friends, and, it was a wonderful time, but it was a little frustrating to not be getting that level of discourse that I really wanted. But it was entree to so much more. And
what was it like? What does a MUFON group do?
Well, back then, it was like, I think, from the other types, there's, they have them everywhere. There's so many chapters. At that time, they were the largest civilian UFO research group in the world. I think they were up around 8 to 10,000 or more members. But it was, again, it was a bunch of mostly white, middle-aged or older men, a few women, and just talking about the latest book that they'd read. Of course, this is, still very early internet, so there wasn't really that wealth of information from the information superhighway, but it was on its way, and it would quickly change the landscape. But it was mostly that, and then we would do investigator training sessions, because of course that's the thing, is that MUFON was all about getting those UFO reports and filling out the forms and sending it off to headquarters into the black hole of their filing cabinets, because nothing ever happened with it. And that was the way for a long time. And of course, the headquarters at that time were here in Texas. They were in, a tiny little town. The only reason they were there is because the head of MUFON at the time, Walt Andrus, worked for Motorola, and they were a big Motorola town. Seguin, Texas. And but we would have local mini conferences. So we hosted people like Ed Conroy, who wrote the book Report on Communion about Whitley Strieber's communion experiences in the book. Of course, Strieber being a San Antonian, several of his experiences happening not just at his upstate New York cabin, but also as a child in San Antonio. Fascinating to see that his arc of exploration with that. But Ed Conroy's book, Report on Communion, I highly recommend. Really, really good. He's since become a good friend, and but we had him speak alongside like crop circle researchers and abduction researchers. So one of my favorite conferences featured Ed Conroy talking about Report on Communion, Dr. Carla Turner talking about abduction phenomena. She was an experiencer, abductee, and unfortunately she was using hypnosis way too much and very badly. One of the worst aspects of that era of ufology is the use of hypnosis. And then we had this, the other guy was George Wingfield, who had a very conspiratorial approach to his telling of the crop circle mystery. And so we had those kind of little conferences that I usually was the guy doing the audio and video for. And so I've got videotapes of those in the archives. And I would also hunt down, like when there were sightings in other parts of the state or nearby, I would contact the local news and try to get, if there was any footage that they'd shown, get a copy of that footage. And then I forget what year it was, 94, 95 maybe. MUFON has an annual symposium, moves around the country. Well, I guess it was the silver anniversary, we were hosting it in Austin, and it was fantastic. It was amazing. And yeah, those are the kinds of things. But the meetings, I mean, it was mostly I would say, so at some point I did become the leader of that local MUFON chapter. Also, there an abductee support group was started. It was a separate group, but it was started by a member of MUFON who herself was an experiencer, an abductee. At some point, she moved away and asked if I would lead that abductee support group, even though I'm not an experiencer. And I said, well, if the group is okay with that, because, you know, I did have the reputation of being a skeptical believer. You know, one person would call me a debunker, and then the next day somebody would say, oh, you're just such a believer, you buy into all this stuff. So, you know, I was always straddling those two perspectives. And so at some various points, I was leading the MUFON group, and then I also at some point was leading the support group. I think never at the same time. But they almost, I was just gonna say, all these meetings over time, the thing that got frustrating, and this went on for decades, it seemed like they always kind of degenerated into conspiracy mongering sessions. And not everybody liked that, and some would stop coming because they felt the same way, that it just kept becoming that. But inevitably there's that sense, and you know, back in the 80s there was CAUSE, the Citizens Against UFO Secrecy nonprofit, that were literally protesting at the White House and trying to get disclosure before that was even a word being bandied about.
I don't want to like poo-poo or lessen any of the experiences the personal experiences that you heard, especially with the support group. But I can't help but wonder, especially with that element of hypnosis, did you see like sort of psychological links between what you were seeing with that and then what we were hearing about with like satanic panic, McMartin preschool trial, all that stuff? Do you see that as being part of the same sort of cultural milieu, or?
I did see it then. In fact, I was subscribed to FMSF, the False Memory Syndrome Foundation's newsletter at the time. This is before I mean, I would say I also grew to have a great disdain for that organization. But even as I recognize that, you know, what is engendered by the phrase satanic panic, that there were, you know, hundreds of convictions of people that on the flimsiest of evidence, sometimes through the use of hypnosis, sometimes just through terrible interrogation techniques, and just a will to believe. In my interactions with all these different people telling me various crazy stories, I saw a wide range of stuff, and some of which really gave me that sense of like, yeah, no, some of this is mental illness, but it, of course, some of this could be, mental illness can be caused by some anomalous trauma, that may have some true anomalous source, but then just manifests in these other mental health type ways. But I wasn't there to. That's the thing about a support group is you're not there to act as an investigator. You're not there to interrogate them or try to get the evidence to prove or disprove their claims. Mostly I was there. I felt my job was to give them a safe space to talk about their experiences, feel safe enough to talk about them, and as somebody who is a seeker interested in these things, take in that information, add it to my my catalog of knowledge about this stuff, and to also use that catalog to say, just here's some things that I've encountered that might help you come to terms with what you experience. I'm not saying this is an explanation for it, but and if you want to just throw it out the window, fine, but I would try to offer an educational perspective of like, are you aware of sleep paralysis? Are you aware of the nature of consciousness? Are you, do you see connections between, your experiences and other things going on in your life? Or, and I think that's why I was allowed in as the leader of that group, because I'd already established that kind of rapport with these people experiencing these things. But there were some that I met who like would straight up tell me that they'd had a lifetime of childhood sexual abuse, and of course that's a whole line of thinking about. There's a whole line of hypothesizing about the abduction phenomena that this is somehow related to that. And some of the best stuff out there as far as like the demographics of experiencers has been done by skeptics as well as believers. Kenneth Ring's book, The Omega Project, is fantastic in terms of demographics of experiencers of both close encounters, abductions, contact, and of course what he already had been doing years before, near-death experience research, NDE research. And then there's a skeptical book on abductions by a Roswell proponent, the classic Kevin Randall, who's still around blogging about UFOs. But he's like one of the old timers, and was, part of the revival of the Roswell case back in the 80s. And he did a book with a psychologist and another fellow, I forget what it's called, but of course the believers hated it because they felt it was just a complete debunking of it. And he was basically saying, I think most of this is sleep paralysis and fantasy. But that book had one of the best demographics of experiencers that had ever been out there. And it caused so much controversy because one of the weird things that he happened to put in there was, I think it was like, I forget the statistic, but it's like 60% of abductees are gay. And I mean, they didn't state it as flatly as that, but that's how it got brought up in discussions. Wow. I don't know if you ever remember the old UFO updates list that was run by a wonderful pirate broadcaster up in Canada, Errol Bruce Knapp. It was a fantastic email list back in the day, and all the big names were on it, and you could write in. But when people started hearing those statistics, they got so angry. They're like, why would you ever ask them? And he's like, this just came up in the course of our interviews. It wasn't like it was even one of our interview questions. And then it just caused so much controversy. But then, so many things good came out of that, and I know we're pretty much at the end here. There was, one of the other classic discussions on that list was, why are there so few black abductees? I mean, obviously the quintessential seminal original abductee case that launched the phenomenon in the United States with the Betty and Barney Hill involves an interracial couple, but generally speaking, and like I said, when I go to the MUFON meetings, it's all these old white guys, basically, not a very diverse crowd. And, there's obviously a lot of reasons that you could look at that as why that would be that way. But out of that conversation came a dissertation by Professor Wham, W-H-A-M. That's not her real name, obviously, but she did this great dissertation that was inspired by seeing that thread, which I remember being a part of. And I was so like years later when I saw and read her paper, it's phenomenal. It's great. And yeah, you can go to the Anomaly Archives YouTube channel and see lectures where she's touched on some of this and all the other relevant aspects of this. And it really is something to think about when you also look at just like the weird proclivity of fascists and Nazis and white supremacists that permeate so much of this culture. So happy ending note, right?
Why is there an intersection there? What's your theory on this?
I think I think part of it has to do with just power and control. Just when humans want to control a narrative, and people who already have a worldview that centers on supremacy, just incorporate it into their own existing mythology, that they can just fit this stuff in, and it just that fits that way. I mean, I don't know. There's obviously this whole sub thread of the whole Nazi flying saucer mythos that has grown and grown and grown, and literally was a recruitment tactic on the part of Holocaust revisionists and the famous Canadian who was imprisoned for hate crime, for Ernst Zundel. He was one of the biggest proponents of this idea of Nazi flying saucers. And from what I understand, there's been some evidence that like literally they were just like, oh, this is just a way to draw in some new blood. Wow. But I think, I mean, when you think about so much of the classic UFO lore, it's all about the different alien races. And Vallée was one of the earliest people to really, yes. Oh, nice.
That's the chart.
And you got some mantids on there. Great. And he warned in his 1979 book Messengers of Deception about both these fascist influences and the use of belief, the manipulation of people's beliefs and mythology. It's just psychological warfare. It's like, if you can, and this is just one way. And since, as Keel and myself and others have suggested, like all major religions were started by this phenomena. That's one interpretation. Like the trappings of religious texts and origin stories all have the same features as what we call UFOs and the paranormal, and thus now it's come, of course, full circle with bigwigs, so to speak, vice president and whatnot, stoking the fire of, oh, they're demons, which just helps further their agenda of stoking spiritual warfare as a way of manipulating people's emotions and belief systems.
Fine line between. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, sorry.
I was going to say demons. Fine line between interdimensional beings. Like, where do you draw the line there?
Yeah, as a Warhammer 40K fan, it is indeed hard to draw that line. The warp is involved, but anyway.
They're having a hard time drawing that line in Washington, D.C. right now, too, where you have just a lot of like people who just aren't very worldly. They're super evangelical. They've been sent to Congress from a gerrymandered 90% red district, and they're like, "Yeah, there are UFOs. It's Satan. It's like the convergence. It's all
I
demons.
mean, sky gods, though. Come on, sky gods, not demons. Yeah. What can you do?
Yeah, same difference.
We should do some rapid fire questions about aliens with you, I think, before we go. I know that It's probably not actually people from another planet that we're talking about mostly tonight.
No.
We've got some important things to ask. So,
yeah, this is a little bit more of, since Raymond, he's obviously known you for a while. Audra is a staunch professional when it comes to this, does some real journalistic work. I am, however, just sort of the dancing court jester on the side who is a hack and knows nothing about you. So I kind of put together some questions in the realm of sci-fi and UFOs and aliens or whatnot, just to give me a sense of smiles, give me a little litmus test of what you're about over here. I think it'll tell me as much about you as some of this interview. So feel free to pass or expound on any of these, but these are just going to be some real quick ones. So let's see. All right. So and I have a feeling I know the answer to this one now. Greys or reptilians?
Grays, but I got no problem, no beef with the reptiles.
Okay.
Yes.
You like rock worlds or gas giants?
I've got more experience with rock worlds.
Fair. Yeah, same for most. All right. If you're going to have to deal with the preferred artificial gravity, would you rather do like the spinny one, like the ring world, or would you want to do a flip like in the Expanse?
Oh, I don't remember. I don't remember what the flip is in the Expanse.
That's where you use the acceleration towards where you're going to create the artificial gravity, like you're standing on the bottom, and then halfway you would flip the ship over and you're decelerating on your way back, so the gravity would be on the opposite side.
That sounds cool, but I'm more.
Sorry, we'll call that one a pass. That was masturbatory
I'm more conditioned
on my part,
to the
right.
spinning, you know.
All right. Do you prefer a Fermi paradox or a Drake equation?
Neither. Well, yeah, pass.
All right, pass on that one. All right. You more of an alien or aliens man?
Oh, definitely aliens. One of my best friend and I, when we first met, we tried to outdo each other in trivia of James Cameron's Aliens, because I literally watched it so many times because I was trying to map out the ship layout, because I'm into RPGs, or was at the time, and was trying to make the map. And I actually I saw it before I actually saw Alien, but I already was an H.R. Giger fan. So, but yeah, Aliens, man.
All right, fair enough. Same realm in films. You prefer E.T. or Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
Oh, CE3K all the way.
All right. So Close Encounters of the Third Kind or Mac and Me?
I just love the Mac and Me Rick rolling. I forget, is it Paul Rudd or whoever?
Yeah, I was gonna say this is our best chance to get Paul Rudd on the show, so I had to throw that in there.
That's it.
And to get a sponsorship by McDonald's.
That's right.
All right, and then I guess last question, or actually no, going back to like the Drake, because this is one of the ideas that's always kind of fascinated / terrified me with the Fermi paradox. If the saddest reality of it is true, and that we humanity are the most advanced species in all of existence out there, you think we should go Dark Forest, or you think we should go like Prime Directive?
Oh, I'm always Prime Directive. I remember some of the discussions about like the defining event for whether a species can go off world is whether they survive the nuclear age. But I've since read some papers that are saying no, it's AI. So if we can survive AI, that's going to be the determinant, and that's terrifying.
That sounds about right to me, actually. All right, and then the last one: if the Earth were to be annihilated by an interstellar phenomenon, which one would you choose, and why?
Oh, an interstellar. I think I have a similar fantasy fear of some kind of mass EMP type event. I mean, that wouldn't necessarily extinguish life, but it would sure, the whole,
that might be worse.
Yeah, just sending us back to the Stone Age like Snake Plissken at the end of
or Charlton Heston at the end of Beneath the Planet of the Apes. So can I answer that last one too? I have an opinion on this.
Ooh, yeah.
Rogue Star is my scariest one, because the Rogue Star doesn't even have to come into the solar system if it's big enough. Doesn't have to get anywhere near you, but it can literally knock a planet off of its orbit and send you spiraling out into just deep space. You're not in any solar system anymore, and you just freeze.
Yep.
Yeah, and this has happened like billions of times in our galaxy, apparently. It's really creepy if you think about it.
Yep. So, nice to see a demonstration of the 3-body problem in real time.
Yeah, well, you're only going to have about a day or two to until you got to the Goldilocks zone. It's over for you.
That's it. It depends on that angle of exit. You're in a sweet spot. You might have a good 6 months before you figure out something is wildly amiss.
Smiles, it's been so good having you on tonight.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
We'll definitely have to have you on again in the future because there was just so much we left on the table, I feel like. So anybody got any last questions for Miles?
Yeah. Can people go to the library, the Anomaly Library?
So, the joke I make about this is, sadly, ever since the pandemic, we've been searching for the most rare anomaly of them all: affordable rent in Austin, Texas.
Yes.
I founded the nonprofit in 2003, in 2018 we were at the best location ever. It was so wonderful, and then the pandemic happened, and long story, but yeah, we have been in storage since 2021, unfortunately, and we are still trying. We have over 7,000 books, thousands of periodicals, and yes, when we have a physical location, we have our non-circulating research collection that people can peruse on site, but then we also have a few thousand books that are actual lendable library.
Wow. Okay, so people want to hook up with you. Well, not that way, but check you out.
Where's your Tinder
I'm
again?
gonna check him out and hook up with him.
Yeah, take a look. Where is the best place for people to find you?
The nonprofit's website is anomalyarchives.org, and then I have my personal website, smileslewis.com. A bunch of other URLs that are supposed to be redirecting to some cheap free WordPress sites, but I've been streaming Anomaly Radio, the web radio network, since the year 2000, so 25 years, and so that would be anomalyradio.wordpress.com. But yeah, smileslewis.com, anomalyarchives.org.
And you're doing a weekly news roundup, is that right? Or?
Yeah, for since 2000, I've been doing a weekly news and media roundup for the Anomaly Archives. It's been kind of on hiatus recently due to some personal issues, but we'll hopefully get that back up again soon.
Awesome. Well, let us know anytime you've got something new going on. We'll give it a plug.
Right on. Well, I love what y'all do, and I hope y'all keep it up.
Same to you, my friend. Thank you. Yes. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us this week on The Fourth Space. If you want to find out more of us, obviously you're watching us right now, so you're on some kind of platform.
They've had enough of us.
Exactly. It's an hour and a half into this. What do you guys think? Where else can they find us, guys? Where I can't remember off the top.
They can check us out at we're on Facebook, and we're on Instagram, and of course we're on YouTube, and it's all the Fourth Space podcast.
Yeah. And if you want to reach me, just tie a note to a rock and throw it down the nearest mine shaft, and it will find me.
It's true. We've tried it.
And if you want to pick us up, you can pick us up on a Substack. But send a picture first. We need to know what we're getting into.
Make sure the picture is of you and recent.
And not just one part of you, if you know what I mean.
And I think you do. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it for this week. My name is Raymond Wiley.
I'm Audra Wolfman.
Miles is not going to plug himself, but that's Miles.
Yeah.
And I'm here.
See you
Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Bye.